Mitchell. My title here, I'm one of the owners and the head Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor, so professor, and one of the Muay Thai instructors. To live healthy, I base my health upon always keeping strict habits, so not trying to vary it up too much. I don't live, in a sense, day to day as far as my health goes. I always keep a journal as far as diets go, as far as water I consume, as far as mental and physical health in general, because in a performance-based activity like this, where you're doing competition, you're doing fights, you're doing things like that, if you don't have that much of a handle on health in general, you can have completely different performances from day to day. You can just feel your body worse off one day than you are the next. And I don't like inconsistency in my performance. So that's why I tend to keep a strict journal on calorie intake, food, water, and how I feel based on that, how I feel in performance, how I feel in life in general, tiredness, anything like that. So that's kind of what I do.
What?
I do a journal basically, since I do about 3 hours of training a day on average, so about an hour and a half of hitting pads, Muay Thai sparring, and then about an hour and a half of jiu-jitsu training and sparring a day. And depending on how much water I've drank, depending on what I've eaten, if I've eaten bad that day, if I've eaten good, if I've gotten the amount of carbs I need, the amount of proteins I need, basically the building blocks for your body, depending on how much I've gotten in one way or another, I can kind of determine whether or not I'm going to perform one way or another. Am I going to kind of hit a wall and start crashing, have my gas tank start going down in rounds where I'm getting tired, my muscles are fatiguing, cramping, things like that. I track all of that through a journal, and I make sure that I keep a consistent level within my diet, within my water intake, within how I sleep, and so on. Sleep is such a huge factor in it. And then I can kind of track whether or not I am going to perform well that day. I can almost predict it, whether or not if I'm going to perform well that day in the same matches or worse. My wife is actually a CrossFit and Olympic lifting coach, and that's something that she studies a lot and works with her athletes, because she trains a lot of high-level athletes. And she was going through the same kind of criteria and training, and she introduced me to a lot of the nutrition, the training for eating for performance, stuff like that. And when it got me into it, I kind of jumped feet first into everything I go into. So I just started researching a lot of nutrition journals, stuff like that, on different ways to perform better, different diets, different things like that. And then I just stay strict to it. Because when you're not strict into it, and you come to a place where you're kind of putting yourself on the line all the time when you're training, especially as the head instructor of a facility, a lot of our athletes, a lot of our competition people are always gauging themselves off of, in a way, how they perform against me. So if I'm not keeping ahead of the curve in every way I can, I don't do them any service by not performing well for them, and then they don't get better off of it either. The tenets of my art, and actually both the Jiu-Jitsu and the Muay Thai, probably the biggest tenets are, I would say the most important one is mental control. It's easy for anybody to come in here and start, whether you're athletic or not, and in some way or another, and start physically trying to do something, whether it's performing in Muay Thai, kicking, punching, stuff like that with another person, or grappling in here in Jiu-Jitsu, where it doesn't matter size-wise, you're always going practically just grappling against somebody. And if you don't have that mental control, it's very, very easy, especially in Jiu-Jitsu, where you're going 6-minute matches, just with somebody else trying to choke you, trying to put you in an arm bar, trying to put you in some kind of submission, and you have to go 6 minutes straight. You have to be able to control your mind in order to control your body. And if you can't control your mind, you will never have control of the body, and you will never have control of the fight. So one of probably the biggest tenets that we have in both arts is mental control. And that's one of the hardest things to learn, one of the hardest things to teach, but it's by far the most important thing, just discipline and mental control. As far as the other tenets, basically we kind of pride ourselves here, especially on not being a school that we produce a lot of egos or a lot of people where they just try to make a name off of each other. We try to help each other out as much as possible. So I get better by making sure that everybody else is as good or better than me. And in doing so, I have to bring myself up to a high enough level to make sure that I can help them, and then in doing so, that helps me get better as well.